Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from the massive studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Brian couldn't make it this week, but we have a special returning guest and co-host this week, Keith Townsend. Keith, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be great to get your insights here today as well. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about futures in the enterprise. Our guest today is Chris Wolf, and recently new title. So hopefully I get the title right here, Chris. VP and CTO, Global Field and Industry at VMware. Did I get it?
Nailed it.
All right, cool. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate the time to be on and spend some time with you guys.
Absolutely. So let's just kick things off very, very quickly with, it's probably been, I think it's a little over 3 years since you've gone over to VMware and kind of leaving the analyst slide at Gartner. And so first of all, tell us a little bit about that adjustment and maybe start off with what's been the biggest change coming from the analyst side over to the evil vendor side.
Yeah, I think, I think the biggest change for me has been the fact that, and this is really what had drawn me to the VMware opportunity, is that as an analyst, you can sit back and work with lots of end user organizations and in turn work with vendors and make some recommendations, but that's where it stops. And at VMware, I can spot trends and work on things and work with our business units in terms of allocating R&D resources to not just recommend changes, but to actually do things about it and to innovate. And that was really what had drawn me back into the vendor side, was really just a passion for innovation and wanting to be a bit more involved.
No, makes perfect sense. And so tell us a little bit, so when we talk about those trends and affecting that change, what are you seeing in the industry right now, and when you talk to customers specifically, what is on their mind and what's most interesting to the customers that are out there right now?
I think right now it's been a bit of a, there's so much going on, I think is the issue, right? There's agility, security, increasing efficiency. At the high level, these are all things that folks are worrying about. There's this notion that or recognition that we have to transition to be more agile, to be more cloud ready, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, in the everyday run-of-the-mill IT organization, especially on the operations side, you have folks that are concerned about all of this, and I think rightfully so. When we think about IT automation, people are concerned about how does this impact my job? I have a family to take care of. And I'd say, while as part of going through this transition, we have a responsibility to ensure that the folks that have, been a part of the IT organization have a bright future. And articulating what their career path looks like is really important, and how they can move forward. That's a bit of a high level. I'm certainly happy to dig into some of the more specific technology trends, but maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I like to
go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, Chris, I'd like to ask you a little bit more, a deeper question on the people side of that equation, and a little bit of the business side as well. How much pressure are your customers under to change? 3 years since you left Gartner, I think an awful lot has happened in enterprise IT, much quicker than it has in the past. How much pressure are those ops folks under to change their technologies and processes?
Yeah, it's tremendous, and I mean, just as a benchmark, you guys, or Aaron had led with asking me about a difference from leaving Gartner. I could tell you at VMware that the numbers of CXOs that I talk to in a given year is orders of magnitude higher than what I had talked to at Gartner. It's typically several hundred a year that I'm either talking with on the phone or meeting with in person, and oftentimes at Gartner, I was working with their direct reports, and certainly some of the CXOs too, but a lot of times it was their direct reports that I was primarily interfacing with. And these folks, the conversations that I've been having, especially the last 18 months or so, have been around a pressure to not just create efficiencies within the existing IT organization, but also to launch adjacent businesses. So how can I take some of the core knowledge that my business already has today and actually go in another direction and create a new revenue stream? And how can I leverage technology to make some of those things happen? There's the traditional enterprises out there are rightfully paranoid, I guess might be maybe too strong of a word, maybe not, of everything that's out there and unknown competitors coming around, and they want to make sure that they have the right agility frameworks and mindsets in place so that they can be far more reactive, but also far more proactive in terms of innovating and trying new things.
So from a sanity check perspective, making sure that, because you as you mentioned, you've talked to 100 of CXOs over the past couple of years or even over the past year. Is it just my organization or my friends' organizations that are challenged with having these new business challenges thrusted upon us and not basically getting new budget, or is that is new money coming with these new opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's I think sometimes that's the crux of the issue is that sometimes you have an IT organization specifically, right, that might have a inconsistent history of making bets, financial bets, and some things have worked out, some things have not, and then now they're saying trust us on this modernization journey. But at the same time, I think even at the CEO level, there is a general understanding that you have to make strategic investments if you're going to be successful. Maybe I am cutting back on budget in other places. And for some organizations, it goes as far as saying, for this particular initiative, you're answering simple questions. Does this make me more efficient? Does this make me more secure? Does this make me more agile? Is this part of a new strategic business? If the answer to all of those questions is no, then you go back and say, well, why are we even spending money on this? And if the answer is because it's time to upgrade, right? That's the wrong answer.
That's a fantastic point. And kind of to add to that, because this is, I think, maybe a subtle nuance of, Keith and I have talked about this before of, a difference in a conversation of, like if we're doing a briefing in front of customers, knowing your audience kind of thing of when you're talking to the director levels and the C levels, how much of those conversations really is about a technology or technologies versus, the business needs and how do you transform to the business needs? Because, what in my experience, what happens is you get a lot of folks in the room and they try to attend. It's the same pitch no matter the level. And so tell me a little bit about like kind of when you're talking to folks and how you talk about either the technology or the business transformation.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, some CIOs specifically are pretty technologically focused, right? While others are very business focused. So there's this balance that you have to strike, because when I'm talking to somebody about transformation, I have to, some of the themes that we're after are very well known, right? And the direction that we have to go at a high level is, fairly obvious in some senses. So what I try to do is to be a bit more precise and be specific in terms of recommendations that I'm making. So, for example, I had worked with a energy provider last year, and I'm meeting with them again this year as well. And the conversation started with the fact that they were rolling out 15 million smart meters into homes and businesses and a portion of their grid. And they were asking me about management of the smart meters. Like we have all of these, they're running software now. We need to really rethink our approach to management. And we started down that path. And that's, in the context of VMware, that's pretty easy. A lot of your smart devices are running some form of a mobile OS, all of which are supported by AirWatch. So we have a great story there in terms of how we can bring all of those together. But that said, this evolved into a more broader discussion, really at both the interest of the CIO and CTO, where we were saying, it's not just a device you have to manage. If I have compute capacity in 15 million homes and businesses, that's actually an advantage that I don't get with, say, a smart device like an Amazon Echo, or Google Home, or pick your device, right? Because people have to opt into that. You're providing infrastructure or compute capacity at all of these places, and now that creates an opportunity for you to actually have a platform that can offer different, perhaps B2B services or end user services, that are localized right on a particular device in their home. So, to an energy company, those types of conversations are really important because they've been getting really beat up, and I'd say definitely for a good reason because of solar, and solar energy is great, and I'm a huge proponent of it, but it's affected the rate at which they've been able to grow. So they're looking to not just embrace solar and become solar providers themselves, but also to look for new ways to grow their businesses, and being able to also be a platform for new software services is something that's very interesting for those folks.
Yeah, and it relates to, and we'll put links in the show notes to these, but you did two blog articles back in, I want to say, the December timeframe, discussing what you had coined the third industrial revolution, and this kind of industry fits into exactly that kind of scenario. So if you don't mind, tell everyone a little bit about what you mean by this concept of a third industrial revolution.
Yeah, well, one thing I learned about it, which was, I guess, sort of interesting, is there's a lot of debate over which industrial revolution we're even in. So I thought this was the third. Some people are like, oh, no, it's the fourth now. And I'm like, well, all right, does it really matter? So
another industrial revolution.
Exactly. So that all said, I think what was the crux of it is just the acknowledgement that we have so much happening in IT that we're able to innovate at a pace that we've never been able to see before, especially when you start thinking about artificial intelligence and machine learning and deep learning. We're able to recognize patterns, we're able to analyze data, and we're able to build new solutions around that data at a pace that we've just never seen before in our history. So, if we thought the last 10 years was significant, right, in terms of a technological jump, that's going to be nothing compared to the next 10 years, just in terms of the pace of innovation that we're going to see. So to me, that's really a foundation for a new era of industrial revolution. And I think this is a time that the technology community, we bear a lot of responsibility here because while all of this innovation is great, right, and is making lots of people's lives better, it's also bringing in new waves of automation. And with that also means we're simultaneously displacing jobs. And in my opinion, it's a moral imperative for the technology industry to continue to heavily invest in education. Just like how people buy carbon offsets, technology vendors, and I'm going to put a blog up on this pretty soon, should be doing the same thing in terms of education offsets or employment offsets. So if we're displacing jobs, we should be investing in training for people to land in new places. I just think morally that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, agreed. It's super interesting concept, and certainly coming about, with all the news here recently of manufacturing and automation jobs, and we're in a very changing time, here in the United States, but really worldwide. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a global economy we're talking about. Now, so we've talked a lot about kind of the big picture things. What's personally interesting to you? As we talk to a lot of CTOs, we talk to a lot of VC folks, and we get a lot of kind of personal opinions, and we always like to ask the question of, okay, what's really, really interesting to you? And like when we had Steve Harrod on the show, he gave us some really interesting views of how he still plays with a lot of the tech. And so what's on your radar these days?
Yeah, I think a few things are. Let me, I'll start with one. I mean, I also love to roll up my sleeves and continue to get my hands dirty. I mean, most of my holiday break in December was just spent getting my Alexa to do some new things, and that also helped to for me to continue to validate some concerns I have with where technology is at, specifically in the IoT space. And this is where we've seen a great opportunity for more VMware partnerships as well, because in the blog post I had published last year, I was talking quite a bit about distributed compute and intelligence at the edge and why that matters. And it's a concept I've been on for quite some time now. I think about 3 years I've been writing and speaking about it. And I think it was November or December that Peter Levine even came out with a position on that as well, agreeing with the fact that intelligence at the edge is going to be a really big deal and a big market. And when my comment to some peers at the time was, I said, if I'm wrong, at least I have good company in being wrong, so I'll take it. But that all said, we're seeing, if you think about IoT and you think about like your home automation as a practical example, if I'm using some if this then that integration, for me to actually issue a command to Alexa and see a response, it might take 3 seconds, right? And that's an eternity if you think about just technology today and what I want from a user experience perspective. I know Aaron, you would certainly know that from your time at Citrix.
Yep.
So if we think about that, right, that means, and we think about the proliferation of devices, I can't be doing IoT-based analytics holistically or in nothing but clouds at scale, because the latencies are just too great. And there's no amount of, there would be an infinite amount of networking that would be required today, at least with today's technologies, to solve that latency issue. So what does that mean? It means that we can start to take advantage of ensuring that we're still leveraging a lot of edge compute that can do some more high-powered analytics. And I think that's something that's an area that's really exciting to me. There are vendors that I have spoken with. Wouldn't be too hard to guess that are running their own serverless and IoT serverless functions and relevant to IoT. And this latency challenge is something that's very real for them. And to a vendor like VMware, given what we do, it's a tremendous opportunity for partnerships with a variety of different providers.
Yeah, I've been a disciple of edge computing for the past, I think, year plus. I've been writing an awful lot about that. And one of the biggest challenges that I'm seeing with this, and I love to hear your feedback on the energy company was a great example. What are customers doing today with those edge challenges when they're, the trend, if we listen to most analysts, is to move out to the cloud. But we simply can't move, to your point, we can't move that edge compute or the management of that edge compute out to the cloud. Solutions don't exist. How are customers addressing that, or is that just a gap today?
I'd say by and large, it's still a bit of a gap. We are seeing with some of the solutions that we've rolled out, like VMware Cloud on Amazon as an example, we're seeing organizations very interested in that technology as a way to close some of their existing data centers is one of the early use cases. There's a lot more, and happy to talk about that. But at the same time, there's lots of organizations where their edge compute is it's never going to go away. They need some at various locations, whether you're talking about an oil rig or a manufacturing plant or thousands of retailers that have localized compute in pretty much every store or branch. And there's for reasons around credit card processing and reporting and other things, there's not much of an appetite to move all of that to the cloud. So the other part of that, though, is they're actually now saying, okay, well, if I have to have this here all the time, well, how can I even monetize some of the compute capacity that I have? Right? How can I maybe use some of this as a new revenue stream for me? So I would say they're even thinking more broadly about the challenge. But the other part of this too, I think that's important here, is there's great solutions, especially when you think about hyperconverged, that can really simplify edge compute. And as fast as hyperconverged has taken off, I'd say it's still not fast enough, because we still sometimes in IT we're our own worst enemy. When we're designing branch office solutions, as an example, we're still putting in these stacks that we're designing ourselves, which then puts the onus on us to continue to maintain them, which is still a challenge and comes at a pretty high cost as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so we'll talk about, let's talk about VMware a bit then. Where do you see VMware's vision taking the company, both in the short and long term? You mentioned the HCI. You've mentioned the agreement with AWS that was back in the, I think, November timeframe, if I remember correctly, a couple months ago now. And we're kind of interweaving all of these things that, let's be honest, it's above the hypervisor at this point. And so tell us a little bit about that kind of broader vision of the company.
Yeah, sure. I think even if we start with the hypervisor, what we're still seeing, even in the cloud native space, is programmatic compute, network storage, and security is not easy. We can call that hypervisor space what we want. But we have lots of folks that go down these container on metal projects and eventually come back to VMware because, again, programmatic storage, programmatic networking, all the automation, all the isolation, management around all of that is a non-trivial task. And that's also a reason why Amazon Web Services runs containers and Xen-based virtual machines. So there's a lot of value in that part of the stack. And what's been important to VMware strategically is to expose that value to all of our variety of partners in both the PaaS space and the container as a service space to ensure that this is an area where we have great expertise, where we can simply lend that to their platforms and just make the developer experience easy, which is what people want. So if I want to be able to do containers as a service using native Kubernetes APIs, I should be able to do that. And I should be able to make that infrastructure just a checkbox. And that's been a big part of our mission in the core business has been around doing those things. Cloud Foundation lends itself to that. You mentioned Amazon, our partnership with IBM, our vCloud Air network partners as well are all on that path. And I think that's definitely important. And one way to think about this big picture-wise is this. There's certainly going to continue to be a lot of use cases where for a lot of services, I should be using the provider native platform services, using the provider APIs and just getting things done, really quickly. Azure has some great services, AWS Mobile Hub, great service, right? And lots of other services you get from Amazon as well. The benefit to that approach is I get a lot of speed and very high agility. The challenge with those architectures is that in all likelihood, those applications or services will just live and die on the provider because it's just too cost prohibitive to go and pull that out and run it somewhere else. And to me, that's just pragmatic. And you should be able to go into provider relationships with that expectation and feel okay about it. But then there's another class of workloads that every enterprise has where they say, you know what, I want to have more control of my IP. I want to be able to dictate my maintenance schedule. I want to use the open source projects that I want to use and the versions that I want to use. I don't want that to be dictated to me by a service provider, right? I want to have full ownership of the app, the data, the APIs, and everything, the entire management ecosystem around it. And for those apps and services, we think the VMware approach is terrific because we're using open source APIs at the PaaS and container level in their native format, which is the preferred integration point for most organizations today. And we're giving you the flexibility to be able to run those things anywhere. Using the same sets of processes and the same set of tools. And I think for the majority of applications enterprises have, they're going to really like operating in that model. And, best of all, if, say, our upstack integration is with Cloud Foundry APIs or Kubernetes APIs, as a couple of examples, if you don't like your relationship with VMware, rip us out. Go with something else. And as long as your other solution is true to the APIs as we are, then you're going to have that replacement. And that puts the pressure on us to continue to do, really good things for our customers to keep them around.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic point. And I'll kind of move on to another. So you hear a lot about containers, obviously, everywhere, and we have for quite some time. But another kind of even more cutting edge one is, you've already mentioned it, is this serverless or function-based computing. Will VMware be pursuing this technology as kind of the next? I kind of think of it as technology horizons or technology waves, and I almost see this as the next technology horizon post containers. And how would other infrastructure products like like NSX or vSAN fit into this picture? Because as you go, more and more up the stack, if you will, from operating systems to containers to serverless, the infrastructure kind of goes away behind the scenes. And so, what is your thoughts on how you integrate things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question and something I've been given a lot of thought to for quite a bit of time. And there's for all the goodness that serverless is, and it's phenomenal. I mean, I can have my 13-year-old son write a function on our Echo and do some cloud-based execution. I mean, that's awesome, right? I mean, very simple model and great time to value. And especially in the IoT use cases, there's other use cases too, don't get me wrong, and manufacturing and financial sector as a couple of examples, retail as well, where it's going to be, very prevalent, and it should be. The flip side to this, or where there's still some challenges with the technology in itself, is, the goodness to a developer is the fact that serverless is a black box, right? And I don't have to care about what's happening in that box, but for a regulated enterprise, that's a huge challenge that they have with it. I want to have an audit trail. I want to know where my data is at all times. I want to know where the compute processing is physically happening. I want to have telemetry around these function executions so that I understand end to end and I can do more diagnostics, et cetera. And in those cases, I've talked with several organizations, many of them in the financial sector, that have said we have several use cases that would support private serverless, where we maintain full control. We want to be able to expose functions, but we want to be able to fully govern it and certainly protect the privacy of our data. It's not to say that I can't do some of that with Lambda as well, because you can. But again, this gets back to organizations that not just want physical control of their assets, but they want control of the IP, the maintenance schedule around it, and things like that for at least some of their functions. And that's a very organic way to think about how VMware can add value in that ecosystem. And what does that mean? If we get into nuts and bolts, it effectively means that the VMware stack has to natively support at least a common or several common serverless APIs, or serverless frameworks would probably be a better way to describe that. That's one part of it. The other part of it, and this is what I had mentioned a bit earlier, is serverless function execution at moderate latencies is still not good enough from a user experience perspective. So if we can help with our technology to bring serverless function execution closer to the edge, I think that's also a great way that VMware can add value.
Yeah, and Keith, you've done kind of a lot of research and talking about this kind of emerging trends as well. And does this vision kind of mirror what you're seeing as well? And what is your thoughts kind of around all of this?
Well, not to get too futuristic and tying in two parts
Sure.
of the conversation that we've had is obviously as we go further down this edge and edge management challenge that we have, one of the, I think, natural desires we're going to have, you look at AWS's Snowball Edge and those functions that come on that. I couldn't imagine that enterprises not wanting that type of capability in-house as well. So to be able to put generic lightweight compute out at the edge and then run functions on that, I think is where I'm expecting companies like VMware to step up and say, you know what, we will help both the provider in the case of cloud providers and customers solve this problem. Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts on integrating serverless at the edge in the cloud and the private data center and how VMware views that.
Yeah, we're like I said, this is something that it's not a will. It's something where we've given a lot of thought to. We've talked with all of the major players in the serverless space and some of the up and comers there as well in terms of what that future can look like. First, one way to think about serverless function execution is consider all the compute capacity that's already at the edge. Some retailers just here in the U.S., they have 10, 12,000 stores with 2 servers in every one of them. Those servers are busy maybe 15 hours a day, right, depending on the store. The other 9 hours a day, they're pretty idle. They're not really doing much. They have lots of spare capacity that's just sitting there. So one option is actually to repurpose some of that capacity and allow us to create a multi-tenant platform on some shared infrastructure that would allow that capacity to be used for, say, data processing or whatever it may be. Another one where the VMware partnership makes a ton of sense is with NSX. NSX can microsegment and do full isolation at a VM or container level today. There's nothing architecturally stopping us from being able to do microsegmentation at the per function level. And that's effectively meaning that you're giving the equivalent of a dedicated data center to every function that processes. That's a level of security that you just can't get any other way. And this is something that we can do in software. We can also do, which as we've demonstrated at a few different conferences, and you can check out Tom Korn's latest session at RSA, that's on YouTube. You can see things we've been working on like distributed network encryption, which can then give you an end-to-end encrypted tunnel between any endpoint you want, whether it's an application instance in the cloud or an endpoint or what have you. We already have technology that can do data at rest encryption as well. So even in areas around privacy, there's some and security. There's some very slick things that we can do there as well to add some value.
Yeah, I think ultimately what I'd love to see, and I know this is, again, we're getting way off into just a futuristic discussion, is using a product like NSX to create that overlay within the data center and then carving out just a logical hypervisor-based enclave where I can just give that part of the management off to a cloud provider or service provider to deliver my functionless computing, and that's just a piece I don't have to worry about it. It's kind of a hosted, managed, virtual data center within my dispersed network. But again, that's super futuristic, but geeky stuff to talk about. Is one of the advantages of having a CTO on the podcast.
Exactly. All right, guys. So we're about the time we probably need to start wrapping things up. So Keith, where can everyone find out more about you and everything you have going? Because you've got quite a bit going these days.
Yeah, I got quite a bit going. I'll actually be talking on a topic of serverless and this hybrid serverless model on edge computing at Interop in May, so visit us at Interop. I know, at least I don't know if you're going to be at Interop, but I know Brian is.
Yeah, no, I can't make it this year, but Brian's going, absolutely.
And just for my normal musings, you can find me on the web, thectoadvisor.com, and on Twitter at ctoadvisor.
And Chris, how about you? Where can everyone find you these days? I found there's definitely more than one blog location, but where's the best way to get hold of you and find out what's going on?
Yeah, probably CS Wolf on Twitter is probably the best place. I'm on various VMware blogs. You can also hit me on LinkedIn is a good place as well. VMware has me literally all over the map, so maybe coming soon to a city near you.
Fantastic. All right. So on behalf of Brian, who couldn't make it this week, Keith and Chris, thank you very much for your time this week. And thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll talk next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.